Well, in relation to our first top story of U.S. drone attacks, we're now going to be joined by Ray McGovern, who is a former CIA analyst through Skype. Mr. McGovern, thank you for joining us on World News. Philip Alston, the UN Special Rapporteur on Extrajudicial Affairs, said the U.S. government should disclose the legal basis for such killings and identify any safeguards designed to reduce collateral civilian casualties and also ensure that the government has targeted the correct person. Is the U.S. doing this?
Well, first off, in my view, I'm not an international lawyer, but I think most international lawyers would say that this is illegal. If it was legal, it would be the U.S. Armed Forces doing it. It's illegal, and so the CIA, which is allowed under all law to do illegal things abroad, does it. Now, with respect to people being killed, people have asked me, are the Hellfire missiles accurate? And I say, they are extremely accurate. And so people say, so there's no problem with collateral damage? And I said, no, there's lots of problems. The Hellfire missiles are accurate. The intelligence is notoriously inaccurate. It all depends on what the target is and whether you have correct information on the target. Now, for John Brennan, the Deputy National Security Advisor at the White House, for him to claim that, he claimed this last spring, that over a whole year there was not one civilian casualty is ridiculous. There have been many, and his thesis there has been disproven by investigators on the ground and people who know about such things. So, you know, there's a lot wrong with this idea. I'm a little bit biased because I was an Army infantry officer, and we learned in those days that the infantry wins the war if the war is to be won. During Vietnam, when I was on active duty, we were told that these blue-suited folks with the B-52s, they would bomb North Vietnam and parts of the South, and we would win the war that way. We infantry officers laughed at that. You never, ever win a war by bombing. And so what we have here is a replay of new toys. Back in the 60s, the new toy was the B-52 bomber. Now it's drones with Hellfire missiles. Never, ever will that win a war. If you look at what happened in Somalia just over the last 2 days, 85 people killed, all right? Now, if you say 85 people, that means when you talk about extended family and friends, let's say a dozen for each. You've got 1,000 people who are irrevocably antagonistic to the United States because they lost their friend, their brother, their son, their uncle.
Right.
So what we have here is really
Mr. McGovern, I don't mean to cut you off because we are running out of time. Mr. McGovern.
Creating more terrorists, and it's quite amazing.
Mr. McGovern, I don't mean to cut you off, but we are running out of time. Let me just try to get in another question in there.
The only people.
Also, let me ask you this. What about the fact that the U.S. claims to fight and help countries that want to achieve democracy? Are the drone attacks peaceful and democratic, in your opinion?
Well, they're not peaceful. They're killing people. Democratic, democracy means that the people have a voice. Most of the people in our country have not been able to vote on whether we should use drones or not. And most of this is secret by definition. They're being done by the CIA. The information is very meager, very, very sparse. And were you to inquire into the particulars, well, that's classified. So in answer to your question, no, it's not innocent, and no, it's not sparing lives.
And finally, just briefly, drone attacks, Mr. McGovern, have become the weapon of choice for the U.S.'s fight against Taliban militants. However, innocent civilians are paying the deadly cost. How is the U.S. allowed to continue this method?
Well, the only rationale that makes any sense to me is that this new toy has captured the imagination of the Air Force in our country. No Air Force people get killed. They sit behind these consoles, push levers and buttons from half a world away, and so if one of them crashes, there's nobody in it, and they lose $1 million or so. That's no big deal. And so, yes, it's the weapon of choice, but it's a weapon that is just prolonging the war, making still more terrorists that we will have to contend with. And so, why is this the weapon of choice? Well, part of it has to do with not letting our blue-suited Air Force folks get killed. But some of it, I'm afraid, has to do with the people who make the weapons, the people who make the drones, the people who profit from this war. We've heard about the military-industrial complex. Those are the only ones that are profiting from this war, but they're making a big, big bundle of money, and I'm afraid that our policymakers are being bought to support this kind of outlandish activity, because the war will continue. That is why our general in Afghanistan now says that this is the new normal, that we will be here for a long time. And Petraeus himself, the general now head of the CIA, has said that this war will be fought by our grandchildren as well. So that's what they're preparing for. It's good for the military. It's good for the industrialists that build the weapons. It's terrible for us people in the United States, because all the money we need for education and other things are being spent on war. And, of course, it's even more terrible for those on the receiving end of these very accurate, targeted drone missiles.
Very well. Thank you for your input. Ray McGovern, former CIA analyst, giving us his perspective on the U.S. drone attacks that are continuing.